Hello, everyone. This is Shelby Tuck Horton. I am the Vice President for Education, and I'm really glad today that we have a really good speaker with this topic that we've all been waiting for excitedly. Talking about AI and your website. So, Brian is I feel like he's a industry expert because he's been around in the wedding industry for a very long time. But I am going to stick with his bio and give you his information instead of me telling you how I feel about Brian and his longevity in this industry because both of us have been in this industry for a very long time. But Brian Lawrence is the co-author of From Browsing to Booking. He's a producer of the Inclusive Wedding Summit and is strongly recommended web design and SEO resource for wedding industry experts like Alan Berg, I Do Society, Wedding Venue Help Desk. His boutique agency has designed numerous websites for wedding planners, DJs, venues, wedding stores, and other wedding vendors across the US and Canada. He has spoken at Wedding MBA 4 times and has done numerous webinars for ABC in the past. He was homegrown in the industry, owning numerous wedding-focused stores and being VP of a national wedding brand. I present to you all who you've been waiting for, Brian Lawrence. Brian Lawrence.
Well, thank you, Shelby. You mentioned the Inclusive Wedding Summit, which took place just a little over a year ago. And I remember listening to your last week's speaker, Nina, who I had brought as a speaker, and she was, talking about different strategies having to do using AI for social media. And I was going, wow, I was like a sponge listening to her. And this whole year has just basically been for me like having to go back to school, having a full-time job like every day. I mean, so many things have changed. And I've realized that there's so much to do in trying to understand and embrace AI that a lot of that time has been spent in that. So, today we're going to really dig into how that could work for your website. But before we start talking about that, or search changes, or anything that sounds technical, well, I really won't try to be too technical. People that are starting to have doubts about themselves, I want to just assure you that planners as a whole on their website are not really doing anything wrong. It's the way your work is understood online is changing, and most of the advice out there is either overly technical or wildly disconnected from how wedding planning actually works. Because after all, you don't run a content company, you don't run a tech startup, you run a relationship business built on trust, judgment, intuition, and care. And the most important thing your website has always done and still needs to do is explain who you are to someone who doesn't know you yet. And what's changed is not the importance of that explanation. What changed is who's listening, because couples are still reading, but now search engines and AI are trying to understand you. And the problem is when your story isn't clear, they guess. And they guess wrong, more often wrong than you think. So this session is not exclusively about fixing your website SEO or AI rankings. It's more about learning how to say what you already know more clearly, more consistently, and in the places that actually influence how couples find you and trust you. You already know how to guide couples. You already know how to, relieve anxiety, explain the options, set the expectations, take them through the timeline, execute the day. This is about bringing that same type of clarity that you have when you're actually doing your job to your online presence. So when couples are searching, asking questions, or comparing options, the right signals are there before you ever meet them. And that's sort of the lens for everything we're going to talk about today. So visibility without clarity takes away from conversion. If a couple lands on your site and can't immediately tell who you work with, how you work, and whether they feel positive about reaching out, then more traffic that comes to your site doesn't do as much. It just sometimes creates more missed opportunities. These fundamentals have always been the difference between a site that supports your business and one that loses leads without you knowing it. Because if someone goes to your website and they leave, they're not going to tell you, and you're not going to know why. So this is not about optimizing around your website. It's about making sure the website itself is doing its job. So this is very important to understand, that AI isn't as creative in the way people imagine, doesn't decide who's the best, and it certainly doesn't have intuition. It looks for information it trusts and assembles an answer from what's already out there. I mean, I'm finding that, I mean, they have all these different catchphrases, what matters, and the way that they end phrases. So when a planner doesn't show up clearly, it isn't because you were ignored, it's because AI didn't have enough confidence in the information it found. So that's an important distinction, that you don't have to impress AI, you just need to be understandable to it. And this is not about starting over. Again, most of you have the solid experience, the real weddings, the strong instincts, the meaningful client relationships. We just want to get rid of the vagueness. We want to sharpen what's already there rather than tear it down. So the websites that perform right now are the ones that are clear about what type of fit you are for a client, not everything for everyone. When you clearly state who you serve and who you don't, you reduce confusion for couples and for search. And explanation is something that usually planners are really good at. All you have to do is just direct that to your website and how it's expressed on your website. But in many cases, what's worked for years still works because it's rooted in human behavior, not rather than algorithms. People still leave slow sites. They still don't really read. They more scan the headlines and look at the images, and they want to get a feel and a gist. They want to see pages that are organized rather than all over the place. And search engines haven't moved away from this either. They basically doubled down on it. So when you hear things are changing, it's not that everything is obsolete. So speaking to AI is a phrase that sometimes gets misunderstood. It doesn't mean writing differently. It means more like trying to remove the friction. If someone had to explain your business to another person in 2 sentences, the question is could they do it accurately? And that's what AI is trying to do. When your services are clearly named, your processes are explained well, and your positioning is consistent, you make it easier for them. And by the way, you're all going to get these slides, so no worries about and also the presentation is being recorded. So just sit back and enjoy the takeaways that you want to write down, but you don't have to write down everything. So your website doesn't stand alone anymore. Search looks at the full picture. What couples say about you, how consistently a story is told. And every place you show up outside of your site is another piece of context for AI and Google. So for example, if you have an opportunity to write a blog post for the ABC website, that also counts on how you're being perceived and how your information could be picked up by AI. And I, all through the years until this change that's happened with AI, is I often felt that FAQs were more of an afterthought. It wasn't something that couples really use that much because, after all, if your website answered the questions, uh, why do you really need FAQs? And FAQs are usually not something that really excites a couple about doing business with you. So I always would do them for clients when I did it on the website, but it wasn't part of the main navigation. But today, AI really responds to that type of structure and likes sharing that information because it thinks having the right answer to questions is very instrumental in how people decide. And the other thing is that AI pays close attention to Q&As because questions signal intent. When someone asks, what's the difference between a full service wedding planner and a day of coordinator? Or do you work with cultural or religious traditions like ours? Those aren't casual questions. They're decision-making questions. And again, AI is learning from that, from how clearly and how consistently those questions are answered across your site. So it's no more about having one isolated FAQ page because that loses context. When the answers live on multiple pages, on pages where the decisions are being made, like the service pages, the process pages, the educational content, that's where the questions reinforce their importance. So having say 4 to 8 FAQs on the bottom of your important pages that relate to that page is the best ways to get good use of FAQ for visibility. I mean, most of the time, there's still not going to be a client-forward usage. It's more at this point for SEO because it helps AI learn to recognize your expertise. And a big shift is that it's changed. The way people search is different. Instead of typing fragments like different keywords all the time, they're asking those full nuanced questions like, is this planner right for a wedding like mine? Or do they understand my priorities? Or can I trust them with this? Search engines are trying to answer not just list options. And again, that's where the FAQs come in. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, AI could definitely make mistakes. And if AI isn't sure, it's going to guess. And when it guesses wrong, it's not malfunctioning. It's just trying to fill the gaps. So that's where, again, trying to be totally and clearly defined and answering those questions reduces the guessing. So this is all of this that I've spoken about has, in all of the research that I've been doing with SEO, has inspired me to come up with an idea that is still in development. And what it's going to be is what I call the AI standalone clarity page. Now this is a web page that is not meant for couples to read. It's not meant to sit in your main navigation. It's strictly built for AI. AI doesn't experience your website the way people do. It doesn't wander. It doesn't infer. It doesn't get the vibe. It looks for clear, dependable information it can reuse. So the ideology behind this page is that it gives AI one page where everything about your business is clear and correct. What you do, where you work, who you serve, the kind of events you're known for, how you actually operate. And all of that gets turned into a properly coded page that could live on your site. So, and this is something that you could build yourself. Like, I'm not here to sell the page. So I'm going to share with you, because I haven't even developed this yet. It's in work. It's going to be a little while. But I'm going to share with you the whole ideology behind it, what you'd want to have on that page, so you can start thinking about it yourself. And that, you have a page eventually that once AI starts looking for you, they can stop guessing. Because all of that information is totally provided by you. So again, the purpose of the page for AI to see, it's not anywhere forward facing. So let's get a little bit deeper into what this page would be. So it'd be almost like how you'd explain yourself if you had 60 seconds and wanted to be perfectly understood. It's not marketing language, it's accurate language. The planner's world is nuanced, and planning could mean 10 different things to the couple: the budget, the culture, the scale, the timeline. And this page lets you define your words so that AI doesn't define them for you. And yes, pricing pages or ranges or pages prices belong here, not because you're committing to a number, because AI sees ranges as context when deciding what's relevant to a search. So here, these are some of the variables on the AI page: that it's text focused, it's structured, it's accurate. It's not a sales page, it's not a branding piece, it's not a homepage replacement. So here are the basics that should be on this page: the business name, the owner or lead planner, the years in business, the service area, the contact info. Remember, even though it's on your website, it's not going to be seen by the public. So it's almost like using that page is almost like an online resume. The services that you offer: planning services, specialties, price ranges. What you do not offer. And what we don't do is not a negative thing. It just helps AI match you to the right searches instead of the widest searches, and therefore attract the right type of client. And then there's the proof about your business. Not adjectives, not claims, the actual footprint. It's more like, here are the places that reinforce that this business is real, established, and consistently described. And for planners, this is really important because your expertise often shows up in places you don't think of as SEO, like being quoted, being featured, teaching, or publishing a blog post or some sort of thoughtful guidance. So the credibility language that can give you one of the most profound online advantages over your competitors if you do this right. And then there's that first conversation a couple has with you might not be your website. It might be an AI summary. It might be for a best planner result. It might be a map result pulling from your profile and other sources. So this page, with talking about your planning process, what matters to you, how you guide couples, help start that conversation accurately. And the reason why it's important is that you can't control every platform. You can't control every directory. You can't control every online conversation, but you can create one clean, consistent, authoritative place that explains your business in plain language. So hopefully, again, you'll be able to go back and look at all of the variables and facets of that page, but that's only one piece of the puzzle. There's so much more that contributes to the whole AI journey of succeeding on AI. And the fact is that reviews still matter, probably even more than ever. But it's not just the quantity of reviews, and it's not just the quality of the reviews. It's also the stories. When a couple reads a review, they're not counting ratings. They're looking for themselves inside someone else's experience. And AI behaves the same way. It learns from patterns, language, and specificity, not generic praise. And this is probably the most important thing that a lot of planners overlook. A lot of people in the wedding industry. Your responses to reviews are just as important as the review itself. So if you respond generically, it doesn't mean much. Just thanking somebody, we really appreciate, we have the honor of working with you, is not what we're talking about. We want to reinforce in that response how you communicate, what you value, what it's like to work under pressure, and how you came through for them, and how grateful you are, and even talking about the nuances of them course, a response to review could be as long as you want. It's not, it's more for the AI and Google to see it. And you can really make the most of it by adding keywords, by adding the venue that you work with. If someone is reading the response to that review and they happen to be having the wedding at that venue, maybe the couple forgot to mention it in their review, so you could mention it in your response. And what AI ends up doing is they look at those language patterns about what couples felt, what problems were solved, how stress was handled, and what stood out when things weren't perfect, which usually doesn't really come out that much with grateful couples. And the idea is that when seeking a review, you could have an influence on what type of review you're going to get, because most couples aren't writers. They need guidance. And when you ask better questions, you get better answers. Like even like prompting them, like what made this process easier? Where did you feel supported? What surprised you about working together? Because coming up with any type of prompts that help inspire that couple to give you useful stories is going to help you win business. It's going to speak to AI, and it's going to even help you rank higher on Google. And thinking about it in other terms, that same type of logic should also take place in every aspect of your online branding. Going down to even like your wedding wire and knot profiles, because after all, while on your website, you have a unique opportunity to stamp your own badge of individuality. It's a little bit harder on the industry platforms because you're dealing with a template. You're dealing with set places to put imagery, a certain amount of text that you can put in. So it's all a matter of really curating that in the best possible way. So what we want to do is create these consistent identity signals that trigger you being an answer to business winning searches, like the best wedding planner in Denver or top LGBTQ friendly planners near me. Google's AI doesn't determine the best on what your website says about you. It's more making judgment from what other people say. Again, your reviews, directories like Wedding Wire, The Knot, Yelp, Google, or even Facebook. So that's where it's not just getting reviews, but trying to get reviews that bring in incredible, inclusive, responsive, the best decision we made. So those are really important. So that's how like your review strategy is your SEO strategy. And you can write all the optimized content in the world, but if no one is validating your greatness out loud in public, AI doesn't trust it as much, and it won't surface as much there. So now I'm going to talk about some ways to help your website strengthen your identity signals. So I had done a presentation previously where some of these slides were there, but I thought they were very important to repeat for the context of AI as well. This is one of the cardinal rules that I try to live by when we think about doing websites for clients, to try to make websites client-centric, customer-centric. Because a company-centric site talks about itself, a customer-centric site explains what it's like to work together. And AI is also paying attention to that difference because couples are. When a site is all packages, features, and credentials, it just doesn't create the same type of connection. But when a site speaks to decisions, emotions, and guidance, it builds trust. And search is learning to recognize which of those businesses are more that way. And we definitely, we definitely want to have those important features that and have that type of transparency that couples like, but we don't want to rely heavily on it. We definitely want to bring in the why of our brand because that makes you more stand out more originally. If a couple could look on a website and you have content there that could easily be copied and pasted into another website of a competitor, how could AI or Google differentiate to in between brands? So things like attention to detail, creating memories, unparalleled service. It's more of the specific language that creates separation and also the specific examples of actual experience at venues, real weddings, blog posts, landing pages focusing on the venues. Those are the things that really create a lot of meaning and show your experience and expertise, which are which are two very important aspects that AI weighs as far as your brand. And in general, it's you can I mean you're entitled to showcase what you feel is great about your brand, but it's more about proving it with how you make it about them and at the same time prove it with, say, testimonials, uh, beautiful actual imagery, your expertise at those venues. So instead of you boasting online about how great you are, the things speak for itself. And also being inclusive. There, a lot of some of the best opportunities to win business is when a couple who has some things that are important to them in defining them as a couple, whether it's culture, rather whether it's race, rather than it's gender, whether it's body size, having things that indicate a inclusiveness and a welcoming, whether it's image, diverse imagery, having certain words that show inclusiveness, like certainly not using bride and groom, using wedding couple, which by now everybody knows. Not only does that help win business for clients, but it also helps you with AI. And trying to have that messaging that puts the couple's love story and experience at the center of what you're going to honor, that you're going to focus on them, on their love, their inspirations, their individuality. I mean, that in itself, making about them could be one of the most powerful sales messages your website could have. And as general, and of course, the visuals are really important. You definitely want for it to be diverse. Uh, you want to show real couples, real emotion, and real variety because then it reinforces who you serve. And also, as I mentioned on, as far as the importance of reviews, a lot of wedding businesses have their testimonials, which are usually chosen from their reviews, all in one place. And first of all, they're not going to be read because it's a lot to read. Again, couples are mostly skimming through things. But the best type of usage of testimonials is when they prove a point. If you're saying something about yourself and that testimonial authenticates it, validates it, that's a much stronger use of testimonials where you have it spread throughout your website in different places, as opposed to having it in one place. So even though this conversation is mostly about I wanted to totally reinforce that this Google is still a dominating force. Google still gets so much more search than AI, and now Google has doubled down. They now have AI overviews, they have Gemini. So they're keeping a lot of people on Google. So Google is very, very relevant and still a really important search engine monster that you want to try to please. And so that brings me to the continued importance of Google Map results. We're definitely, in an industry that has some very strong players that kind of take away a lot of searches from meaning meant for individual businesses and take them to their platform, like Wedding Wire and The Knot and other platforms. So that doesn't matter where they're located. They spend a ton of money in SEO. They get millions of people to their website, and they have great authority with Google. So they're going to come up on top of a lot of the searches that you would want to come up with. However, because they're not local in any area, they cannot come up on Google Maps. So that is one of your bigger opportunities to shine on Google Maps. And often on any type of search, the first three results on top of Google Maps come up on the homepage. So it's really great exposure. And also when you come up on Google Maps, it's influenced a lot by proximity, but Google also factors in your reviews, everything I said about it earlier. Well, also in your reviews, if you mention your location, your service, and even the venue, that also helps. That helps make your reviews that much more, like on your website, that much more credible. And then on the flip side, if your business hasn't responded to reviews or has a small quantity of reviews, it signals to Google that you're not active or relevant. So, showing up on the map isn't luck, it's very intentional. It's about consistent engagement, and it could be the difference between being on page one or being buried. So there's a few things that I want to talk to you about that probably you haven't heard. So there are businesses that consistently do better on Google Maps searches because they have a keyword in their name. So like for example, in this case, the name of the business being Beautiful Expressions doesn't really have a keyword. So the question is, should Beautiful Expressions change their name to Beautiful Expressions Wedding Planner? And according to Google guidelines, you have to have your true name. So if you just add those keywords just to trick Google into thinking that it's your name, the chances are you'll end up getting away with it for a period of time until you don't. So because someone from the outside, a competitor, could complain that that's not really your name. So the best thing to do if you want to give yourself a competitive edge, if you don't have keywords in your name, is you can file a certificate for a change of DBA in your local area so that you'd have something legal. It doesn't affect anything else but that you're doing business as name, to be that name, like Beautiful Expressions Wedding Planning. And that actually in itself might help your ranking on Google Maps, that simple change. And yes, a lot of businesses just add wedding planning to their name and hope for the best that they don't get called out on it. And most of the time you don't, but I'm giving you a fail-safe that you can do if you want to really make it official. Because then if Google challenges you and says, well, your profile is going to be suspended because your name isn't your name, then you can dispute it and send them a copy of the DBA certificate, and you get reinstated right away. And then this is a really big question among planners and other people in the industry that typically don't actually have retail locations. Should I show them where we live? Should you show your address or not? The fact is that for a Google Business Profile, you have to give Google an address. But for people that don't want that address to be displayed, you can hide it. But overall, Google does favor a business on their profile that has an address displayed, even though in their guidelines that address is supposed to be publicly available, either by appointment or during set business hours. But usually Google doesn't pay attention to that rule unless a consumer would take the time to say, well, I drove all the way to 751 Rockville Pike and it was a house and nobody was there, and went on to Google to report it. That could cause a red flag, but usually things like that don't happen. But in general, you actually can, sometimes a Google profile isn't shown as complete, and sometimes you actually need to add some sort of image to show a symbol of your location, even if you don't want to show that it's your home. And in general, this is a concept that's really important to know, that say you decided to actually have a physical location. Google traffic counts more than street traffic because only 1% of the population gets married. So walk-by traffic doesn't mean much. Google traffic are couples that are local to you, search what you do and where you do it. So it's very, very targeted traffic. So say you wanted to take your business to a next level and you want retail exposure. You could find an office that is around the corner from any real location, but it'll still count in the eyes of Google of being a prominent location. And then you would get all the SEO benefit. So the question that I have is it worth looking into about actually moving your business location? Say you currently have a home-based business. I previously owned wedding centers in the early stages of my career that provided one-stop shopping, and they were independent storefronts. But I also sub-rented space in several bridal shops. And this was before Google and SEO. But so the main thing then is I had access to wedding couples to promote my services, which of course would be the case now, but you also would get the SEO benefit, especially if that location was in the heart of the city. I mean, to a certain extent, if you sub-rent, say, at a photography studio or any other vendor, it's like having the prominence and the credibility of a physical location without all of the retail expenses and headaches. And plus, you potentially have a funnel for getting additional business. So sometimes, depending on how much you want to grow, this could be a very viable strategy to consider. I just wanted it to be in your toolkit. Another thing about your actual Google Business Profile is that you have to look at it almost like it's your homepage, because when someone is looking at your actual Google Business Profile, there's a lot of parts of it, but there are only a limited amount of parts that are front-facing, that are the reason that someone may look at something and decide to click forward to your website or to contact you. So again, it's the reviews, it's the quantity of reviews, it's the quality review score, it's also the photos, it's also the posts. And here's something that most businesses in the wedding industry don't realize, is that there is a special type of front-centered exposure called products that is available, that you could activate in your Google Business Profile, where you can frame your actual services as a product. You don't have to put any prices, and it could just show in the front, almost like a visual menu of some of the services that you provide, and you can add a lot of them, and it has a lot of it has a lot of good preview information that makes your Google Business Profile more desirable than your competitors. So it's a really easy thing to do. Uh, I mean, I'm sure that if you've worked on your business profile, you've seen this type of control panel that comes up, uh, and that's where you could then look for the different ways to update your, update products, edit services, all these different things. Google values a complete profile, and they have like a little bit of a it's like a circle that shows what they feel is the progress of how complete your profile is. So the idea is that Google doesn't like any other color but green. So there are a number of things that you would need to go into your Google Business Profile to see what might be missing if you're not green. It could be that categories don't fully reflect what you actually do. That there could be services that are listed but not contextualized. Uh, sometimes it could be, and what we found in our cases when we manage Google profiles is adding a photograph that represents the area you're located in if you hide your address and you don't want to show a picture of your house. Sometimes that immediately with all the other information done already, you couldn't figure out why that wasn't green, but that was the thing that usually changed the color to green. So then when it's green, that is a solid confidence builder for Google ranking. It's also telling Google they know exactly what this business is, they understand who it serves, and they trust the data enough to show it more often. So this really helps. And there are certain things that are important to understand, of tips that could help you rank on Google Maps. These tips may seem pretty simple, but you'd be surprised how many people don't follow them. So if a client says, "Our Brooklyn wedding was amazing thanks to your name," that gives Google a very specific signal about where you operate. So one of the things that you might do in communicating with your couples, especially the ones that you really feel are on your side, that were really grateful, you have a friendship with them, you could ask them to include certain keywords in the reviews. And then you can go ahead and add some keywords of your own in the responses. Also, photos in reviews go a long way. And you, of course, have the ability to add your own photos, but it's even more golden when a couple that leaves a review also adds photos to your Google Business Profile. That shows engagement. That shows that you're highly thought about enough and popular enough for someone to really add their photos to your profile. It's sort of like a social media type of mentality that Google has. And again, responding to every review, responding meaningfully, responding quickly. You should really respond no later than 24 to 48 hours after. So those areas with a little consistency goes a long way, and it's definitely in your control. Have you ever wondered why your business isn't showing up on Google Maps? I mean, I do hear this all the time. And the truth is, visibility on maps isn't at all about being the biggest. It's about being the most trusted in Google's eyes. So some of the things that may attribute to why you're missing out is, again, what I talked about as far as your actual geographic location. If your physical address is not anywhere close to the city center, Google does want to give visitors their best experience, so they will prioritize proximity. And again, infrequent to low quality reviews and not responding to reviews. So one of the newest and biggest shifts is that the near me search terms, that couples are, instead of saying wedding planner in Philadelphia, they're asking for wedding planner near me, and having all of those different terms that involve proximity to an area rather than the exact area. So it's really important to signal to Google AI platforms and your website where you serve them and why you're a strong logical choice. So what we will end up doing is add terms to the website that bring in near a particular area. And we've done case studies. I have a case study right on my blog that shows how much that little incorporation to the website made a difference in getting more clicks to the website because of AI searches. So in general, I just wanted to, again, tell you that Google is here to stay, that they have AI mode, that so that people could dig deeper without having to go to ChatGPT. So pleasing Google is really, really important. Asking questions is something that's really changing, as opposed to the keywords. And there's something that surprises a lot of people, and that is when your business is mentioned in AI mode, you don't get a link. Because with AI search, they're not trying to send users to your site. It's more about keeping them on their platform by answering questions in full right there. So what ends up happening more so is that you might get mentioned, but then they may search for you by name on Google to then find you. So it's not good enough to have just to rely on SEO. You need, on your website, you need to be written about, you need to be mentioned, you need to show up in ways that gives Google the confidence to summarize you as an expert. You're trying to figure out ways to get quotes. Like, for example, there's an actual platform, called OFD Consulting, Megan Eli, where she is a well-known PR person in the wedding industry, and she is hired to do these posts that what are the top trends for something in the industry, and she has quotes from different wedding vendors that are part of her membership. So things like that add a lot of credibility because you're mentioned on blog posts and articles that have a lot of authority, that are getting a lot of views. Also, just trying to be proactive about writing your own blog posts, and not only for your own blog, but trying to get them posted elsewhere, having reciprocality with other vendors and saying, hey, I'm going to write a blog post spotlighting your business. Would you mind doing a blog post on us? All of those things that are outside of your website could really, really help. And even though, as I mentioned a few slides ago, Google may not include a link to your website, AI could pull information from your Google business profile. So that's another reason why you want to have that green ring on your Google business profile. You want to cover all the bases because AI may be pulling information to list about your business. So I just wanted to share again a review of things here about AI, the credibility markers. Are people searching for your business by name? Are you consistently getting strong reviews? Are you being talked about on third-party platforms? Do you show up in trusted articles or directories? Google is the biggest directory, but there's also Bing, there's also Yahoo, there's also a lot of yellow page directories, there's Yelp. So even though on its own you may not get a tremendous amount of benefit, Google looks at those other platforms as credibility for you that you're a trusted source in the local area and may help you rank more the more places that you're listed in the same way that you're listed on Google. And I find that certainly one of the most important types of searches that you'd want to come up for are the best in the top. And this is again not based on what your website says about you. It's based on what other people say in the reviews on other places. So again, I'm reinforcing it over and over and again that you need to get yourself out there in any way that you can. Any writing opportunity that you can get published somewhere else is going to go a really long way. You know, if you become an expert, I mean, certainly, you know, people that have spent years getting their advanced certification, that is a really good thing to tout anywhere you can. I mean, yes, it means something in, you know, you know, as far as when you're trying to win over a client, but it also means something in the SEO and AI world. So again, you know, the other thing also is, you know, getting all of these different. There's also podcasts, being on panels, really trying to dig deep to share high quality content that positions you as an expert. So, you know, the expertise part of it is something that could only be good for your brand. It's also good for your own business self-esteem. So, you know, try to look for things that you're an authority on that isn't as widely circulated everywhere you go. Like, try to be niched. Like, for example, like Lois Pierce. I mean, she has done amazing content that she's actually done some work for me personally on different, like she did this wonderful Indian wedding blog for one of our clients. So really getting deep to, you know, to having this authoritative type of content is going to go a long way for the AI and SE and the Google searches. And also remembering that it's not just wedding venues, wedding planners. It's the questions, the detailed questions. It's giving real examples of your work. But no matter what, all your writing is for humans first. That's the important thing, because AI will easily interpret all of the intent. They'll be able to know where you're located, where you should be mentioned. But it's having that curated, excellent content that's really, really helpful. And again, you want to show visitors what to do the moment they land, and that, you know, and that's having strong calls to action, checking availability if you're available for their date, getting a quick answer to their biggest question, highlighting what makes you different. You know, I had a meeting with a planner right before this talk, and she had an existing website. She showed me a staging site for a new website, and the website is organized as she is as a planner. It shows the different packages, very, very neatly organized, everything that someone would want to look at if they're looking at a brochure and just want to get basic information. But it doesn't show what makes her different. And that's what I encourage you to do, is to really work on how to be different, how to be original. So it's, again, this is a term that I've used for years. Quench the thirst for differentiation. And with that, I'll leave you with that thought. You know, I've shared this before. You know, you can get access to chapters of my book, and I'm ready to help anybody and meet them in any way they need help. I love working with wedding planners. I mean, that's my background in the industry. I actually own stores that provided one-stop shopping, and I'd be happy now to open up the floor to questions.
Brian, we'll have just a little bit of time for questions. Some of the people may have to log off because they have to get back from their lunch hour. There were a few questions that Catherine asked, and I think she highlighted a couple for you. Catherine?
Yes, thank you so much. So we had one bigger question, which I know you addressed a little bit in your presentation, Brian, but I thought you'd love to talk about this more. Vanessa Dominic Events, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, asked, what if you live far, about 1.5 hours away, where your typical clients are having events, but you travel to that area all the time? Having our business in Google Maps can be worse because then clients see that you live far and won't call you. Should we skip this step then? For example, I live about 1.5 hours from OC, but 90% of my business is there. Once I speak with them, it's okay. But maybe if they see my business is that far, they won't even call.
So the first thing is that if you're not really getting business in your local area, then there's no reason to show your location. You could be a service area business and and list the areas that you serve. And secondly, one of the strategies that we use for online visibility in areas that are not really close to a business is we do alternative location pages. So we'll create an actual, almost like a second and third version of your actual homepage of your website. It could be almost the exact same thing, but it needs to have a local flavor. It needs to be different. It can't be duplicate. So working and optimizing a page like that could help you get rank for people searching on Google and AI for people in your area. The more granular that you get with that type of approach, usually one page is just a starting point. But if you have like packages in that area, uh, venues in that area, like just really building a lot of different pages and content that talks about you being associated with that area, that's gonna go a long way for you.
Awesome, thank you. And next, I believe this was about with social media profiles on Google Business Profiles, if I'm not mistaken. MGT Events had said, great information, thank you. And what about LinkedIn? Is that useful to stand out?
I think that LinkedIn is a great B2B tool. Uh, first of all, it's an opportunity for you to be more proactive about building connections with other, like say venues and other types of businesses that could be an influencer in you getting business. And certainly, uh, one of the least used funnels for the wedding industry that always surprises me is that no one ever really thinks about going to jewelry stores and introducing yourself, saying, "Hey, I'd be glad, as something uh, bonus if someone buys an engagement ring, I'd be glad to offer like a free planning and coaching session for for the engaged couple." Uh, so there's definitely, but LinkedIn is definitely for that purpose. It's a less crowded space for our industry, but certainly, I mean, the groups on LinkedIn are definitely nowhere near the Facebook groups that exist. But it's definitely, I definitely think that it's really helpful, and especially if you're a planner that also does corporate, because I think you have a really good, that much of a better chance of getting corporate business uh, on LinkedIn. But the idea is to not just have you got to really work that profile. There's an opportunity on LinkedIn to to add articles, to add videos, to add testimonials. You can ask for recommendations. So it's not just having the profile; it's what you do with the profile.
Definitely. And that's especially true, of course, for Google Business Profiles as well, as you talked about today.
Yeah,
And I think that's it for questions, but we did actually have just one question in terms of would you go back to your book slide, please, from Elise? I have shared the link in the chat, everyone, for a form where you can request the free chapters, the free access of Brian's chapters of the book from browsing to booking. And there's also the QR code on the screen now. Thanks, Brian.
sure.
Brian, thank you so much for all of this valuable and very interesting information. And I'm so glad that you have agreed to let the attendees have a copy of the slides. So I will send them to them as
I
soon
will,
as you
I
send
will
it to
definitely
me.
do it. I mean, again, this isn't stuff I've been talking about for 20 years. I mean, it's new, it's nuanced. So I'm really glad to share it. I think it's important. Sometimes, having a slide, doing the slides is secondary, but I think in this case, going back and really reviewing the slides with some of the detail that I couldn't exactly like articulate word for word, I think is really important. So I'll be delighted to send that right over.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here with everyone today. And I thank everyone else for attending. I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar on February 18th. Brian, thank you. And thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.